Oh, hello guys. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
Yes. So, without further delay, let's just start with today's very short lecture. This is about writing a research introduction. So I would want you to have something to take notes. Oh, okay. Let me start recording it so that I can be sharing it with you later. Okay, so I will be briefly telling you about how to write an introduction today. And basically what I will tell you about is the layout of introduction and the importance of introduction. So these are the core drivers of how the introduction should be written. In many cases, you'll find that introductions are different from one another, but then what I will tell you here is something that you will always find and something that we are always looking for when we are reading an introduction, not only an introduction to your research, but also introduction into papers, maybe that you are publishing, and maybe into chapters. We are also looking at those things that I will be teaching you here. Even if we are reviewing some work from other colleagues, we are still looking for those introduction aspects that I will be teaching you today. So we'll look at the layout and the importance of introduction. The importance is what you are supposed to cover. You may cover more than what I will be mentioning here, but what I will mention is what is the most important. So looking at a rough layout of an introduction should look like some kind of a thinking tree. Like you should have like a skeletal description of how your introduction will be like. The first part of the introduction is usually the background to a crop or soil or a technology or whatever that you are working on, or I mean like the object of focus in your research. If you are not in crops, maybe you are working with soil, then you'll start by saying, then why is soil important? If you are working on a crop, you start by telling us why your crop, your specific crop is important. Like maybe if you're working on maize, you start telling us that maize is a stable crop. You start telling us that maize maybe it contributes significantly to the country's economy. That's the starting point in most cases. It can be something else, like in pathology, they can start with a pathogen. In some areas, they can start with whatever that they are working on, such as technology. And then the next step will be the introduction of a challenge, of what you want to solve. These parts usually come in the first paragraph. It can be a first paragraph or it can be just first 2 lines. It depends on how big the introduction is, and how big the introduction is depends on what you are writing for. The introduction usually contributes in terms of size. It contributes 10% of what you are writing. It contributes around 10%. It can be 15, it can be 5, depending on how brief and how clear you are saying what you want to say in the introduction. So it depends on how you want to write your introduction, but an ideal introduction should be approximately 10% of what you are writing. It should contain like 10 pages if you are writing a 100-page document. If you are writing a 10-page document, a 1-page introduction is enough. And then once you have introduced the challenge, maybe your challenge for this presentation, let's say maybe you are applying fertilizer to improve maize yield. Then you will introduce a challenge that maybe the yields of maize are not as high as they are supposed to be. And maybe somewhere, somehow, they've managed to improve the yields and you want to test it if you are using your own fertilizer instead of the fertilizer that they used there. And now you will go to the literature to find what other people has been trying to solve the challenge. And that's where you will be looking at the fertilizers that they have applied and say that their fertilizers was like this, like this, like this. And then they applied, and this is what they have observed. And if there is no fertilizers that have been applied, then you go to look at what has been done to solve similar challenges. Like maybe you are introducing fertilizer. You are the first person to introduce fertilizer as a solution to that yield problem. So what you would go for is what has other people tried. Maybe they tried changing irrigation, and they found that if you change irrigation, if you irrigate more, then you get more yield. So then you look at how does that happen, and you also look at how they did their investigation, like what parameters did they look at, and how did they measure those parameters, and when. And we are also looking at when did they apply this different irrigation system and all that. So, and you also, in the literature, you're also looking at why you think a certain technique will work better than the other. Why do you think that application of fertilizers will be better than application, or will be like application of more water as irrigation? And once you know that, you will be able to find out what is known already, and what is known should not be part of your study. Here you just mention what is known so that you are showing the research gap, you are showing the uniqueness of your study. When it comes to the uniqueness of your study, you must always come up with something innovative. You must come up with something that has not been done before, and you must be able to support why you are doing what you are doing. You mustn't just come up with something just because it's not been done before. You also go back to that the fourth point on the literature review, where you are sure that your certain technique will work. That is should be in your innovation also. It should drive your innovation, because now you will know what will work and what will not work based on the literature that you have read. Another thing is you must be able to hypothesize when you are done with the introduction to your study. You must be having enough information that you can say what is going to happen. If you use your technique that you want to use, you can say, okay, a hypothesis is an educated guess. It's like maybe in your introduction, in your literature review, when you were doing this brief literature review, you saw that they have applied fertilizers maybe on something like maize, but not maize exactly. And they found that the yield of let's say maybe of barley or sorghum, the yield of sorghum increased when they applied fertilizer. And then in that case, you can hypothesize and say, because sorghum and maize are almost the same, they are both grasses, it's likely that the application of fertilizer will also increase maize. That is a hypothesis. You have like a reason to say what you think will happen. And then it's in the end of every introduction, you'll always see a section where there is a study aim and the objective. So the first section of the introduction is the mysterious part. It's where you're coming with a problem, but then you don't know the solution. And it's got those question marks. And then the second, after that, you follow with the literature review. That is where you look at what is known with what you are working on, or what is not known. And then towards the end of the introduction, that's what will map, sort of give you guidance on what you are supposed to do to solve the problem that you want to solve. And looking at the importance of the introduction, like what the introduction should show. It should show what is called the rationale. A rationale is a background of why did you think to start the study. It goes with the first point that I said, that you start by introducing the importance of the crop and then introducing the challenge. Let's say maybe you see that the maize is planted in a huge place, but then the yield are not adequate, are not enough, are not responding to the place that is planted maize there. So with that, then that is your rationale. That's where you started thinking that maybe there is something you can do to increase the yields of maize without increasing the land that you're supposed to use. That is an example of a rationale. That's where it all started, the background. And with that, it comes to two backgrounds. You can have like a background that maybe you saw, it's called weight-based. That's where you saw that there is not enough production, there's not enough yield that is produced by farmers using a certain piece of land. And then you thought that you can increase without increasing the size of land, but then increase the maize itself. Or maybe it can come from the literature that is research-based. Like in most cases, when people do research, they will do research and discover as they go through other sections of their research that there are things that can be done that are not yet done and can be done by someone else. Like in those cases, they will give suggestions that future studies in this field can be focusing on this and this, and that will be helpful, and they will be explaining why. So then you just get into the research that is already suggested, and that will be the easier one for those people who like books. But for those who observe the world and then think how they can solve it, comes from what they have observed. There are two kinds of researchers out there. There are people who read books more, and there are people who observe more. So it depends on what kind of a person the person is. And then there are mixed backgrounds where maybe it's something you observed and also read about it. And when you were reading about it, you realize that it does exist even where I stay. Then you try to solve whatever that problem is. And another important aspect of the introduction is that it provides previous knowledge associated to the type. This is very important. This is where you will say that your study is new. Otherwise, you'll be repeating something that has been done before. You have to go with the literature review as careful as possible and make sure that you are taking your time. While you are writing your introduction, you're taking your time to read all the information that is available, which is close to your study cycle. Otherwise, when you do this and you realize when you are on your materials and methods, when you just do this to browse through and finish the introduction, and when you are on your materials and methods, you realize that it has been done before. You have to change the entire thing, even the cycle, and that will be like a waste of time. But if you did this slowly and surely, you will be able to find out what is the gap, what is not known in the literature, and then you do that. Remember, you have to be innovative in most cases. You don't have to repeat something that has been done. It's very unlikely that you will find a different results from something that has been done. You'll find the same thing that happened in that study. So to do a literature review in an introduction, okay, this is just a brief literature review. It's not the same as the one that Dr. Elephant will be talking about with you. This one is for the literature, the introduction literature review. It's just finding out what you are working on, and then finding out what your objectives will be, and then finding out what can you hypothesize. So in this literature review, what you look at is exactly what you are working on. Like if you are working with a factor, is what is a treatment. It's what you apply to change the performance of maize. If you apply a fertilizer, and fertilizer is a factor, and what you measure is called a variable or a parameter. A height is a variable. So then when you are writing an introduction, a literature reviews section in the introduction, you don't write literature review, but it says sort of like short paragraphs. In this case, you will be writing exactly about the effect of fertilizer on maize, the effect of factor B on maize, and the effect of factor C on maize. The number of factors depend on the broadness of your study title. Like maybe if you are saying you are analyzing the effect of fertilizer, the water, the irrigation water, and the spacing on the plant or on the maize yield, and then you'll be measuring a variable height and the crop size and variable C and variable D. We have to talk about all these factors in your introduction and all these variables and also the interaction of these variables. But it's not always the case that you have to talk about the interaction. Sometimes you won't find studies that have interactions, and that is where you will see that you have to do the interactions and check what's the. That's where you will like doing correlations if you are doing the interaction. And what it does is the introduction provides you with the research guidance. Like if you see that there were no interactions from the previous slides, if you are reading and you find that there were no interactions of fertilizer and water application on maize yield, then that's what you should be doing, because you don't have to repeat something that has been done before. So it gives you the research guidance by that, and also by looking at what techniques other people have used, you are also getting exposure to what you can use in your materials and methods, and what can you assess, like parameters that you should make sure that you are assessing when you are doing similar study. It also provides the hypothesis. Like I said, if maybe you find that what you are doing has not been done on maize, but it has been done on a crop that is similar to maize, then you can do a hypothesis of what is supposed to happen. A hypothesis is important because it's not like you have to get what you hypothesize. Like if you get the opposite, those are still considered very good results. If you get the hypothesis you said, it's also still a very good result. If there is no good or bad hypothesis, it's something you are supposed to look to while you are working, and it will give you guidance. Like in most cases, they will say what is called the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is what researchers say so that in the end they will reject it. They say something opposite. They say maybe the fertilizer will not affect the maize yield. Then that is unlikely, because fertilizers are likely to affect whatever that they are applied to, the growth of whatever this is applied to, and then the growth will affect the yield, of course. So it also provides importance of your study. This is the most important thing, the research gap. The research gap is like when you are reading there, maybe you have an idea of what you want to do and you find it that is already done there. Then you will have to read around what has been done, and what has been done will give you what has not been done. And the most important research or research proposal or introduction is the one that will introduce what has not been done. Sometimes it does happen that people do what was done before just to check whether it was true. But then those are not important in the world of people who want to discover new things. That is not important. And for you as a researcher, it doesn't create any significance. Like if the thing has been done before, it's very unlikely that it will change. So you have to find something that has not been done. And if there is something like that, then your research importance will be more like valid. Like people will want to read what have you done. But if it's been done before, people already know that. So getting the research gap is the most important. It's why you have to do the literature review, not the broad literature review, but then the smaller literature review, just to check the factors that you are working with. But with the actual literature review, you will go broader than that. But in the introduction, I emphasize on this. In the introduction, you're only looking at the factors and the variables that you will be working with, and the combination of the factors that you will be working. So in the end of an introduction, what normally happens is there is aims and objectives. It usually ends with these, and an aim is a broad aspect of what you are trying to do. Like maybe in the case of maize and fertilizer, you would say you want to assess the application. That is the aim. You want to assess the application of fertilizer to increase maize yield. You want to assess the application of fertilizer to increase maize yield. Yeah, it is a general thing. It's not exactly saying what you are going to do. You're just assessing the effect of fertilizer on increasing yield of maize. But when you come to an objective is more specific. An objective is where you are saying, in this study, then you will be investigating the effect of broadcasting fertilizer. You see, now you are saying how you will be applying the fertilizer on yield, maybe maize height, and the crop size of maize. Okay, you will be like looking at the exact application, that is the factor, and also the exact measurement, like the things you'll be measuring, the parameters, which are said are variables, are also mentioned in the objective. That is the difference between the aims and the objective. The aims are sort of general, but the objectives say exactly what you will be working on, what you will be using as your treatment, and also what you will be measuring when the crops are already there. So the introduction is basically, you have to imagine it as just steps that goes to an objective. Because in the end of every introduction, you will find objectives in most cases. So what is most important about it is that once you get objectives, the objectives will tell you what you have to do in the material and methods section. If you find that maybe in the research that you are doing, some things have been done similarly on other crops, then you will know what data to collect. You know if maybe the plant height was done on some other crop, and it did happen that the fertilizer increased the yield. So you will know that you will have to measure the height because it has been done, but then now you are measuring it on maize. That is the data that you will be collecting. That data, because in the research it has been used to explain the yield, you can still explain the yield of your maize using that data. That's where you say the crop size increased and the plant height increased because I applied fertilizer. So there is like, you are speaking the same language as other researchers, but then you are using maize. So the data will also tell you what kind of analysis you have to do. Like from your literature review, that basic literature review, you will know what kind of analysis you want to do. Maybe if you find that, okay, the plant height was affected, but it was not as affected as the seed size. Then, or maybe what towards the end of the study, there was a problem. Maybe there was drought, or maybe there was blockage of irrigation water. Then in that case, you have to do a correlation. A correlation analysis is something that you estimate the other variable based on how the other variable was affected. Then that is where you know, because in another study, in a literature review, there was like the effect of fertilizer on both the fertilizer, on both the plant height and the crop size. But then if you are just comparing, the application of fertilizer and the maize that was not applied with any fertilizer, you can use the bars and the plot graphs that are normally used in data analysis. There is no need to go to all the correlations. You only do correlations if you want to see how variables are associated with one another. Like the correlation is done when you are saying, okay, I see that my maize will not reach a stage where it will be producing cobs, so I won't get the actual seeds. But I know that someone else did this and saw that by the rate of growth, the yield was affected like this from the literature. And then you will look at the rates of growth and say, because my rate of maize growth was higher than that one, I assume the seeds that were going to be produced by this maize was going to be better. That is where you do the correlation. But then in the methods and section, I think Prof. Esring will explain that better. But then objectives are the ones that will give you that information of how do you analyze your data. And what is important, what is most important about an introduction is that it should be about 10% of the entire thesis or the paper that you are writing. That is very important. It determines how big what you are writing will be. If you've got like 2 factors in the introduction, then you are writing, it will restrict you. Like if you have 2 factors that you are analyzing, it will be like you have 2 factors and then maybe 1 parameter that you are writing. It will be like 3 paragraphs in your discussion, then that is too small. And if you have like a lot of factors in your introduction and a lot of variables, then the introduction will correlate with what is going to happen in your discussion, and the discussion section will be bigger because the introduction was a little bit bigger. You have to explain when you are writing your results and discussion in the end of the project. You have to explain everything you introduced in the introduction. And it is very important that where applicable, it should contain the most recent references. Citing the most recent references gives a reader an idea that you know what is happening within that field of study. You know what is happening in that agronomy. You know what is happening with maize. You know what is happening. You don't go to references from the 1980s and you apply them now, because a lot of changes have happened over the time, and you will find that all those changes have changed what you are assessing. So you will be assessing something maybe that was discovered in 1992 and it's not applicable at this time and age. So it's very important that you look for the most, maybe the last 5 years or maybe the last 3 years, but then there are studies that are not usually done. Then in those studies, you'll find that the most recent means the 1980s. So in those cases, you cannot escape that. You will have to go for the last reference that you saw, and it will be then in the 1980s. Another thing is the introduction is the first section of your thesis. So this is a section where you have to attract the reader. Otherwise, if you have like lots of grammatic and spelling mistakes in the introduction, it's very rare that the person will be interested in reading, in focusing on reading the entire document that you have written. So you will find that maybe the person reads the introduction and realizes that it's full of mistakes, and then doesn't read the literature review and just goes straight to the materials and methods and jump straight to the results and discussion. So it's important that you write your introduction as fluent and as accurate as possible. That will help you attract the interest of the reader, and it will help you because the person will be able to read the entire document And when they are reading the entire document, they will be honest and just. They will be able to understand everything you are saying instead of jumping some steps where they see that they will be struggling with grammar and struggling with other mistakes. Yeah, so that is all with the introduction. And what I think I should do is I will share with you some papers that I want you to read, and those papers will be, I will highlight most of what I've said here. The things about objectives, I will highlight the research literature review. I will highlight the research gaps. I will highlight also the background, and I will highlight also the types of backgrounds that you have to look at. Or maybe quickly, let's look at one of the papers that I think will be explaining one of these things. Is there a question?
No questions so far, sir.
Okay. Okay, I will share with you these papers. They are all different and they've been written by my colleagues there, so your supervisors, and you will see that what I like most about this paper, to make an example, is that I said the background can be based on the world base, and sometimes it can be based on the literature. If you are looking at this background here of this introduction, it starts from a review that has been, the authors read from someone. But then it goes to say diets in South Africa and other developing countries. And they concluded that the poor micronutrient status among the poor is caused by insufficient and undiversified diet and compounded by soils of low micronutrient status. This background here is based on what the authors read.
I'm sorry, sir.
Are you seeing the screen?
No, we cannot see it, sir.
Okay. Let me. Are you seeing it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the introduction, the mixed introduction that I'm referring to. It started from a review of someone else, a review that was written by other authors. So this review, the authors of this paper saw it when they were reading a certain paper. And then it goes down, they are explaining like what the paper says and what is happening in the worldwide, what you can see, or something that you can see if you get out. And then they also go to the literature review. There is the section of literature review. And when they have read the literature review, they start saying it is against such a background that promotional and research effort for wild vegetables need to be taken seriously. And that is where they are making, like they are saying the research gap. They are saying why this research is important. And they go on to motivate that. And then they go down and until they say some studies that have reported the supernutrient composition of wild vegetables are not controlled environments and involve collection from the wild or purchasing from the market and conducting tests. This I highlighted because it's that part where they are saying the importance of their study. Why is their study important? So there are three parts here. This one that I just read here, which states the importance of the study. And then this one, the literature review, and then the background. Those parts are always there. No matter how they come, I will give you like a number of papers, but you will notice that they are always there. And together with the aim, like as you see there is the aim of the present study was to compare under well conditions, the accumulation of zinc, copper, and iron. But then in most cases, people jump straight to the objective and not state the aim. If they do state the aim, they will still say the general aim and then say the specific objectives. I think our 45 minutes ends here. I will send you these papers. You will understand more, and this recording, and you will understand more as you read most of the papers that I will send you. I will highlight what is important in those, and you will realize that what I have highlighted is always there in the introductions, and that is what you need to also apply when you are writing your own introductions. Are there
Okay, noted, sir.
All right. Are there any questions?
I think as we read the articles, we'll be able to come up with questions, sir.
Yes, and you are always welcome to ask me. You know my number. I share it on this.
All right, all right.
All right. All right. Cheers, guys.